Welcome back to another episode of It's Go Time.
5 cents a piece. How do you? That's what. Yeah, they have a button that you. I appreciate you stopping by. I
Yes,
actually met
sir.
him on a very interesting circumstance. I was door knocking with my cowboy hat on. It actually rained that
He's
day.
like, man, who's this random dude on my porch?
It did.
Man?
It did. Yeah.
What he's trying to tell me?
You know, every time I go knocking with a hat, people look at me. I don't know if you watch Chuck Norris, but Walker, Texas Ranger, had the black guy on.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone think I look like the black dude from Walker, Texas Ranger. So when I
telling
go
you.
knocking, they're like, "You look like someone famous." And I was like, "Okay, I'm waiting." I'm like waiting, especially like these older white ladies be like, "I think I've seen you on TV before." I'm like, "No, but okay." But yeah, I was wearing my cowboy hat on. I was trying to promote an open house I was hosting in your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
That house ended up selling, but make a long story short, we started a conversation, and I thought everything you were saying was quite interesting, and wanted you to come on the podcast, kind of share your story, share the same passion that I felt when we had that conversation to our viewers, and just kind of let people know who you are, what you do, and so on and so forth.
Well, first off, I thought it was a joke. When
You never said do it a cowboy. Come on.
Well, no. First off, if you had a cowboy hat on, man, you probably would have got a lot better response than having a Cowboys hat on. But if you had,
I like that.
but
Shot fired, bro.
I didn't
The
have my
difference.
garage open, but I'm a Bears fan. I'm originally from Chicago.
Okay.
So if I would have had my garage door open, you would have saw the big old orange and blue. I moved here about 3 years ago. I was a trainer for Wingstop restaurants, and had a good time with them, man. Had a blast. Traveled around the country, especially during COVID. I was away from home like 260 days that year.
Wow.
So,
Really?
yeah, we had a blast, but we were still opening restaurants, man. And moving down here was a pretty good deal because I knew I wanted to end up in Texas. I was stationed down in Corpus Christi
Okay.
back in 2014, and my son, he was a freshman at the time, and he went to Flower Bluff High School. He's about 6'3", 200 pounds as a 14-year-old kid.
Whoa.
6'3",
At 14.
Pounds.
Yeah, he was huge, man.
Bro, I was 125, probably less than that, getting put in lockers when I was in high school. What are you talking about? What?
Yeah, he wanted to play football, so we got him on the freshman team at Flower Bluff High School. But me being down there, I knew I wanted to end up in Texas. I knew that time was coming when I was about to retire. Mm-hmm. I was like, man, where am I going to end up? And I knew I wanted to be here, but I just needed to find the way to get here. So, but after I retired from the military, after spending 24 years, man, I ended up in St. Louis, spending some time out there, a couple years, and then I moved to Chicago. Moved back home for about a year. Actually, not in the city, but in the Aurora. That's a Chicagoland area outside the city.
Okay.
Stayed there for about a year, and they offered me a different position for Wingstop in Dallas because the position I had prior, I can work remote. Mm-hmm. So I moved from St. Louis to Chicago, had a good time, just traveling around, opening restaurants, training, doing a lot of good stuff. And then they asked me to move down to Dallas. I was like, don't have to ask
There
me
we go.
twice.
When?
July of 2021. What is this? 21.
Okay, so
Oh,
it's about
okay.
3 years now you've been out
Yeah,
here.
about 3 years.
Cool, man.
I
Is
like
Dallas everything you envisioned prior to the move, or? Yeah, that's a hard pause right there. That side was
it. Actually is better
okay.
Oh, okay.
than
That's
what
good.
because it's Chicago. We have Chicagoland, and Chicago's a big city, but our metroplex isn't as big as Dallas Fort Worth
Okay.
at all. So you can drive an hour and a half east or west and still find a good time, and you don't have to run into anybody, right?
That makes sense.
So north or south, you can go down south to DeSoto and Denton, and two totally different places,
Completely
totally
different,
different
yeah,
people.
Some people said I was watching this thing that said it really love how Chicago is, and I've never been, but it said the way the downtown is, the walking radius to like fun activities to do was like one of the most amazing things. Like the downtown is a true downtown kind of experience.
There it is.
You don't really have that out here in Dallas.
Yeah, because you go to Dallas, you see a lot of it's empty.
It's empty.
Empty
Exactly.
downtown. Like Chicago, downtown is moving from about 5 in the morning till about 8 at night. But then you have a different type of crowd that'll come in at night. Probably some bars out there or what have you. But if you stay downtown, if you're a visitor, you can walk pretty much anywhere or Uber, like to Grant Park, or you can go up north to like Wrigley or something like that. So, and the Loop is nice, man. And that river tours, I've lived there all my life, man, and just did a river tour back in 2022.
Really?
time?
Yes.
I've also never been to Chicago.
The architecture, when you do the river tour, the river, there's they just give you all these different stories about the amazing architecture.
That's cool.
And
Interesting.
yeah, and the history behind it. It's pretty dope, man. I was like, man, this is a shame. I had my head down the whole time, right? I'm like, I got my coworkers with me. No one's from Chicago, and I was like, well, what about this, Omar? I'm like,
Why you asking
yeah, I'm
me?
like,
I'm
why
a
you asking
tourist
me?
too right now. What do you
Right. I'm
mean?
from the South Side. I don't know nothing about this, but but that's the thing. Like, when I was young, we pretty much stayed within our radius of where we live. Everything outside of where we live, it wasn't foreign, but it was pretty much, we heard a lot of it through word of mouth. It wasn't, we just didn't venture out. And it wasn't really because of the gangs. It was pretty much we had everything we needed right there. But the gang situation didn't really come until later, until I got a little bit older, yeah.
So obviously, you one of the biggest person that hailed Chicago, came out of Chicago, as you know, Kanye West. Now, was he born there?
Oh, you about to
or-
say Michael Jordan? Eh?
No, I think, you know what?
Jordan from Chicago?
No, he's
No,
he's
just
from
played
North.
for you. Just
Yeah,
played
he's
for
from
you.
North Carolina. Kanye West, I think he's from Chicago for
Yeah.
sure, but I think he was born in Atlanta.
So you transplant.
If I am not mistaken, no, I think he came to Chicago when he was about 2.
That's right.
Interesting.
Yep.
I think he was really young. I'm not gonna just say what age he was, but I know he was really young. But he's considered Chicago, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask the biggest question that when I speak to people who are from Chicago. Obviously you guys have this fight with New York. Pizza. I gotta ask. This just to ask. So the whole pizza thing. In your experience, you lived in Chicago for quite some time. I don't know if you've been in New York,
Oh man.
but when it comes to the pizza, though,
Let me tell you.
what makes it different?
Oh my God, man. I'm probably gonna get drugged for this. Look. So let me give you a little bit. When I was at Wingstop,
Okay.
I used to have to open restaurants in New York. We opened our market there while I was there. And the first thing I would get when I got to New York was a slice of pizza, bro. Yeah.
New York slice.
It's good.
Really?
Yeah. Now, when I can't compare them, and I won't compare them because deep dish ain't for everybody. It's not for everybody. It's something that you're better on. You have to eat it with a knife and fork. It's a bunch of cheese, just a little bit of sauce on the top, but it's good pizza.
It is.
Now, we also have a thin crust with pretty much the same ingredients.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, you have to taste that. If you ever, you guys are going to hear about like Giordano's and these big restaurants. But we have, on the South Side, we have Italian Fiesta. And that's what I recommend. Now, if I was to compare that pizza to New York pizza, hands down, Italian Fiesta, South Side, Chicago.
Why is that?
Italian Fiesta. Okay.
It's cut in squares. We get a lot of heat for that, but it's cut in squares, and you don't have to, it's not a task. You could just pick up a small piece, and the sausage is different. It's real Italian sausage, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's cooked raw. So therefore, that's where you get a lot of your grease at the bottom and your flavor inside the crust. So yeah, but it takes a long time. So it takes like about 40 minutes to
For it
cook.
to cook. Wow.
Yeah. So you got to try it, man.
Hey,
You gotta go to Chicago,
I gotta go
man.
to
You
Chicago.
gotta go to
first.
Chicago.
I've
Gotta
never
try it.
been. But so you mentioned a few things. Obviously, you said you spent 24 years in the military.
Yes.
Where exactly within the military branch and were you stationed within?
All right. So I was part of two branches.
Okay.
I'm a two-branch guy. So, but both of them are seagoing services. I spent 9 years active duty in the Navy, and I spent another 15 years active duty in the Coast Guard. And like I was telling him earlier, it was broken service. It was like I think about 3 months separate. You know, I was a civilian for 3 months, and I joined the Coast Guard. But I wanted to stay in a seagoing service. The Coast Guard seemed a little bit more interesting to me. And the reason is, with the Navy, we worked up in order to go on the deployments. But the Coast Guard performed the jobs every day. So they did the migrant ops, the drug interdictions. They did all of everything they did. It was just everyday work, right? Fishery patrols and stuff like that. And whenever we were needed, you know, we would go, you know, overseas and help out with some things, right? I spent a year in Iraq
With the Coast Guard?
with the Coast Guard.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, we get this notion like the Coast Guard, you don't think about it, but you're right. Coast Guard is every day. We don't think about it.
Yeah, you
They're
don't think about it
always
like, you know, and
patrolling
plus we
everywhere.
perform everything in the Coast Guard. We perform everything in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It's Homeland Security. Prior to 9/11, we were part of Department of Transportation.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just learned something new. I did
And
not know.
then after 9/11, we became Homeland Security. So we became it became a little bit more law enforcement, but we became under a stronger umbrella, right?
Very interesting.
So yeah, so it became cool, man. And then, you know, in the Coast Guard, if you have your collateral duties, will include law enforcement.
Really?
Yeah, if you want to, no matter what job you have, you can train to be law enforcement in the Coast Guard. So you're not subjugated to you're not siloed just to your job.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you want to get out there and do some things, you can do it. If you want to go out and go into like special response teams, you can be a cook and be on the special response team. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So our conversation we had in the lobby was quite interesting. You kind of touched base a little bit on, you know, how as kids, you know, we don't take things serious. But as time goes on and as you get a little bit older, you tend to adapt and formulate your own ideas and who you're going to be in the next stage of your life. And as I was stating, we had an ex-NFL player who just recently wrote a book. And he had that same, I wouldn't say epiphany, but he had that same waking spirit of, you know, at 39, almost approaching 40, like my life is now starting. Like I've understood all my mishap, all my past lessons and everything else. So, you know, you're touching base on that. And it was something interesting. You said at 35 is when you started learning. You took it serious. And then you asked yourself from what you do for a living. Now you said, man, I could learn and get paid doing this. What does that actually, you know, entails exactly?
All right, so let me go back. So when I was talking to you earlier, man, when I was in school, I was lazy. Like I said, I didn't get, nothing sparked my attention. Like I did music. I tried to play 2 instruments. I tried to play the trombone and the trumpet. I learned how to play it, learned how to read bass clef, treble clef music, and, you know, but I just didn't put any effort into it. Now, like I said, when I turned around 35, and around this time, I think I was, I had my first back surgery. After my first spine surgery, I had an L5-S1 fusion. And I was just laid up, and I was just looking at documentaries. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. You know, I've been missing out on a lot of stuff. And then I started reading books. Started buying books. I started getting into the autobiographies. My first autobiography was this guy named Nathan McCall. And I remember this book because when I was in Cuba, I used to read this book all the time going across the ferry, and then I just stopped. So I finished that book, bought the autobiography of Malcolm X. For some reason, every young black man reads that book, and if you haven't, you need to read it.
I have not. So
you have to read it. Okay. Don't let the movie. The book is in his words, so you might want to read that. So I started getting more involved, just more into people, you know. And this kind of, and because at this point when I was 35, I said, I'm injured, my back is messed up. I have to start thinking about something different. I know I don't want to become a full-time chef and stand on my feet all day, but I do like to teach, right? So that's when everything started to twist and turn. I started thinking about what am I going to do when I get out? The military has to end. I have to start thinking about a second life. And the first thing that came to my mind is, all right, Omar, you're uneducated, man. Your experience is not going to get you all the way through. So I was like, I'll start school once I retire. So I'm like, all right. So during this time, I'm about to retire, and I ended up going into a training team. And this training team travels all around the country, and we go to the different military units, and we do audits, we train, and we help them fix everything pertaining to their books financially, right? We also get into the safety of food service and teach them better methods of cooking, introduce new ways and new equipment that, you know, we're going to be coming out with in the Coast Guard and stuff like that. And it felt good, man. I actually walked away every time I left somewhere, left the unit, and I felt good. Like I just gave them some valuable information that they'll be able to use. And gave them my information so whenever they need me, they can call me. And I can walk through, help them out with all their problems, and the phone calls come through, the emails come through, and I'm helping people. And now I'm like, okay, this is great. Now I want to do more. So after that, it was retirement time, and I sat on educate myself, man. And I said, well, let me see if my experience will carry me. So I got a job consulting, and then I got tired of that. So I really wanted to train. I really wanted to let my voice be heard and make an impact. And that's when I got a phone call from a good friend of mine now. His name is Tito Ruiz, and we talk all the time. That's still my buddy. Well, neither one of us are with Wingstop anymore. But he said, you know what? You know, why don't you join this team? And you know, we can learn a lot from you, and you'll get a lot from us in return, right? So, man, I started implementing my training style, and you know, whenever I go to a restaurant doing a consulting, then I'll start training right afterwards. And then I saw the trend that restaurants started doing better, right? And that made me feel good, and I just wanted to get into it more. But guess what? As time's going, I'm just traveling, moving around, and I never get educated myself. So they asked me to move to Dallas. I moved to Dallas. I'm having a blast. Now I'm not traveling as much. I'm only in New York, DFW, Las Vegas. So those are the only three places that I'll go. Now, everything is great. I'm training new managers that are going to be working in our corporate restaurants, one-on-one group training. I mean, it's great. Next thing you know, I get a phone call to ask me to come to the office. And I'm like, they never really asked me to come to the office. You know what's going on. So, and they were like, yo, we're going to get rid of your position. But we have these positions if you would like them. And nah, I didn't want to do it. At this point, I said, I just didn't like the way this happened, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
our relationship was way better than this. So I was like, no, I'm fine. And at that point, man, I said, I'm not working again. I had a pension coming in. I can live off that. I'm a single man. My children are grown. You know, I can live off my pension for a few years. So I said, you know what? Let me enroll in school. So I'm just sitting there. I'm enrolled in school. I'm rolling all of my credits. So I said, okay, I have a track. 2 years max. Because everything I've done up until then, I have taken courses prior to, but never steady. So come to find out, I only had to pretty much just do 2 years solid.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I hit the ground running, man. And 3 months into it, I get a call for another job, and they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. I'm in school full time. I'm not working, and I'm really trying to figure out what to do. So I was offered a remote position, and I didn't have to do a lot of traveling, and I can finish school because the last thing I wanted to do was stop at this point. So, man, like I said, instead of it taking 2 years, I think it ended up taking like 18 months. Because instead of taking just 2 classes, I would just throw on another class. I had the time. I was working. My first 3-4 months at the new job didn't require a lot because it was a new program, and we were pretty much building from the ground up. So, yeah, everything kept moving, and I ended up graduating in September of last year, September of 2023.
That's amazing.
Yep,
man.
I had got a 3.98 GPA. I was shooting for the 4.0.
Man,
Yeah.
I have to shake your hand, dude. That's amazing, dude. That is incredible.
That's sick.
And then I still travel a lot with my job.
That's
I
amazing.
still travel, but that's the fun part. And you know, I set bound. I have a fiance. We have a 7-year-old. We have a dog. But let me tell you, she is the greatest woman in the world, man. She gives me that time. She knows how important it is to me. And after I got my bachelor's, I went straight into the MBA program, man. I did not stop. I just kept moving. I'm struggling right now.
Yeah.
This is probably
tough.
one of the toughest things I ever had to do. Shout out to my older brother, Jerome. He was the first one. He got his master's in psychology. And I could imagine, I just was like, oh, that's easy. That's easy. and he was like, yeah, you think it's, hey, but big ups to him, man. He's a smart guy. But it's hard. But I graduated in May. I'm not going to stop.
The finish
My
line's
GPA
in sight.
is 3.9 still, and I'm trying to maintain. I think that's what it is, man. I'm trying to,
Yeah.
you know, but
You
That's
dropped a lot of
incredible.
nuggets in that little just portion of your life right there. One of the biggest things that I love from what you just stated was you had to come to the realization of like facing your truth.
mhm.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of us we don't want to face, right? Because we're afraid to kind of look ourselves in the mirror and like really have that deep conversation. You stating you're not educated, like that's a big, thing. It's almost what David Goggins said when he was overweight. He wrote and had post-it notes on his mirror in his bathroom, and he just put everything on every single post, and to the point where he finished off the whole post-it notes that he had, and it was over maybe 500 notes.
Wow.
All over his bathroom. He said, stated in his book. And, when you hit that point to not be where you are right now, and like that's a testament, right? Like when you come to terms with who you're destined to be, there's no end in sight, in a sense.
That's right. But I had to look at it at the big picture. I said, man, I've been to 37 different countries, man. I've sat down with locals and, just listen, but I'm still not formally educated. It doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but I think with my experience in the training field prior to educating myself, it helped because I have the experience. Now let me formalize it. Let me bring it together. Let me show people. I can showcase this. Having 25 years of a military experience and an MBA is great. There are some folks out there. There are a lot of veterans out there with PhDs and doctorates.
That's what you got to go for next.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's one of those things, man. Once, like I said, I lived in the projects. I grew up in the projects. It was a 16-story building, and every floor had 10 apartments on it. So let's say it's roughly 160 families, right? So you had 160 mothers looking out for you. You know what I'm saying? You had, and my mother had 5 boys, right? So we were inside this we were in a silo. It wasn't just a tall project building, it was a silo, right? Not to keep people out, but just to keep us in and contained, right? So at some point, I knew I had to leave. I saw my oldest brother join the Air Force and leave, right? And he comes back and he's showing me pictures of him being in Korea, him being in Guam, him being in all these places when I have never went to school with another white student. I have never, none of my classmates from pre-K to high school
How was
were not
that?
white. All black children.
How was that when you
It was
encountered
normal.
Okay.
It was normal to me.
Like you said, you wouldn't know any different. Right?
Yeah,
You
it
just
was
think it's the
normal,
yeah.
right? So my culture shock came when I joined the military.
Wow.
Now, I'm stuck in a bay with 85 other people. Everybody's different. Some people, don't speak very good English. Some people are never seen people like me, right? So that's where the culture shock came in, man, and that was the toughest thing. That was one of the toughest things. Second toughest thing is when I got orders to Scotland, right? Now, my first time ever even being on an airplane was going to boot camp.
Wow.
Right. So I get to Scotland. No, I'm on my way to Scotland. Everything's great. I'm happy. I'm going overseas. Hey, my brother went overseas, told me how much fun it was. And I just come out of this culture shock, and then now I'm about to go to this even bigger one. I land in London Heathrow Airport, and I'm just sitting there waiting on my plane. I think I have like an 8-hour layover. And this one just goes to Glasgow. So I'm waiting for my plane, but the whole time I'm watching police walk around the airport with submachine guns. This is 1992, by the way,
Sure.
right? 1992, summer of 1992. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. What's going on around here, right? So, and through this, I'm hearing accent. I don't hear no one that sounds like me. So there's a newspaper right there next to me, and I just have my head down. I'm faking like I'm reading a newspaper. So I cover my face with the newspaper. I'm crying like a baby. I want to go home now. So this lady touches me on the back. And, I jump, and she said, "Is there everything okay?" And I pulled my face from this newspaper, and I just got stuff all over my face. Right. And she said, "Whatever it is going to be okay." And I'm like, okay, whatever, but this ain't working.
Yeah.
I want to turn back around and go home. So, but I get there and end up having the time of my life, right? End up making some really good friends that I still keep in touch with to this day. Wow. Some people passed on, right? But to this day, I still talk to some folks, Got arrested in Scotland.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I woke up chained to a hospital bed, man. I'll have to tell that story later.
That was for off camera.
Yeah, that's a drunk sailor story right there. That's a drunk sailor story right there, man. But yeah, I got arrested twice out there, which they would, and that allowed me not to be they wouldn't even let me in Canada because of it. Yeah, man.
Wait, why?
I got into some trouble over there.
Okay.
Man. Like some really.
We'll
like
keep
some
it
fight.
PG-13 after this one. We'll tell the
It wasn't nothing bad. Like I didn't commit murder, but I just just the way that I was dealing with racism, right? Having a Scottish person say something and they don't even know what it means, right? And it led to some pretty
Scuffle.
bad, and a few years later, I was stationed in Seattle and I wanted to go to Canada for the new year. And you know how this was before the passport. So I get there and they told us to pull over, right? Took my ID and come back and they asked me a couple questions. Have you ever been arrested in this town? At this time, I was like, yeah. Well, sorry, buddy, you can't come in. We're not gonna let you in today. And they turned us back around, and I had to go back to Seattle. But I can get in now. Everything is cool.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. But yeah, I was like back in 2008, 2009, something like that.
So we can really say that ignorance definitely isn't bliss, because that guy, from whomever it was ignorant to the fact of saying something to you that he wasn't really keen on knowing what it may have kind of made you feel.
Right, right. But yeah, I think he did. He saw how it made me feel. He saw it. He felt it. But I don't think that he understood the magnitude of it. And it's hard because like sometimes you don't want to get angry because they said it. It's more of they just should have known better. But he didn't. And I had to learn that myself because while I was when I woke up chained to the hospital bed, his mother came to see me.
Oh, wow.
And said that she did not raise her son to be that way. And she apologized to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And asked them to let me go. They let me go. I was charged and I had to go back.
Yeah.
But they didn't take me to jail, right? But, you know, that's not the country where they just grab you and lock you up. The first time they arrested me, they told me to go get in the car, and I just walked into the back of the car. I didn't get handcuffed. I didn't get pushed down or nothing.
Wow.
They just say, you get in the back of the car. I'm like, okay, I know what I just did. I just need to just get in the back of the car.
Yeah.
So they didn't carry guns at that time when I was living over there. Just, you know, you'll just see these guys, hi, bye. You know, they had a stick, but you never seen them pull it out.
Wow.
They had relationships with the people in town, right? So, but it was cool, man. I loved it, man.
There was one thing that you said, and I wanted to make a joke when you talked about your back. I know it wasn't funny, but I thought about Mike Tyson when he was in the ring. When it was like,
I broke my back.
He's like,
Spinal.
my back, spinal. And it came in my head. I was like, don't say this joke right now.
Yeah, I broke my back. Say, what happened out
It's the
there?
worst time for you to say this joke right now. This man talking about his back. You know, leading from your service in the military, you're talking briefly as far as, you know, some of the things that you learn in the military that you currently use in your current career field. Like, how do you descend from the military teaching to what you apply currently in your current day of life and career?
Well, in the military, one thing, the difference is we can't make anybody do anything, right? So with the way the teachings now, it is geared more toward encouragement, you know, confidence building, more just, you know, saying that it gets better, you know, and it's now you have to be a little bit more softer and you have to be a little bit more, how can I say it? What's the word for it? More socially aware, who your audience is, right?
You come in as like direct.
Right. In the military, it was more, hey, let me pull you into this room and give you some training. But now it's more, you have to treat people how they want, not just how they want to be treated, but how you would want to be treated as well. It's more of a give and take relationship. It's 50-50 because I don't like to train and just talk. I like to conversate. I like to have sessions like this to where we can learn and build. And my training is geared more participatory training to where I'm gearing you toward to answer the question. Right? That's the way I train. But in the military, it's structure. There's steps. You have to do things a certain way. But in the way it is now, it's more of changing the mind frame, changing the state of mind. Changing the mind frame. Because in manufacturing, man, they have an older way of doing things. your plant manager will probably be an older gentleman or older woman, and they have a fixed mindset, right? So the way I do it now, my training style now is to gear you toward the growth mindset, and let's grow together. If we're going to have any pains, let's have these pains together. If we're going to celebrate, let's celebrate together. And that's the mindset now. And that's the way I train, vice how I used to train. Right? Okay. It's more, okay, you guys are going to have to do it A, B, C, and D. These are the Coast Guard instructions, and this is the way we do things, and this is the way you will do it. And I'm going to come around to see if you're doing it this way. Right? Now it's more of, let's work together, let's grow together, let's hurt together, let's do everything together, and let's do everything as one team, right? Because when you're introduced to a new concept, especially like I said with the old, some fixed mindset folks, they'll kick and scream, man. They'll kick and scream until somebody hears them, somebody helps them, but you really only need to spark the mind of one person. Right, and once that one person starts to do it and other people start to see it work, right? Now you have the general consensus, right?
They start buying in.
Yeah, people, you get the buy-in from the other employees. And man, who doesn't want to be happy at work?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And if I'm building a product, I'm going to take pride in that product. Every time, man. Whenever I'm on the street or whenever I'm in the store and I see our products, I pick this product and I can pick the product up, look at certain labels to tell you where it was made and who probably made that loaf of bread.
That's awesome.
Right? And that's pretty cool. And then I take pride in it and I buy the product. I don't look for a free, bread or products from where I work. I buy it. And I encourage my wife to buy it, my fiance to buy it, and I encourage my family to buy it, right? Because I know it's fresh.
That's
right.
amazing.
So, but it's just the buy-in, just a different type of buy-in. You're made to buy in the military, but now I have to mold you in this setting that I'm in right now, and that's the difference, right?
You mentioned as far as, traveling and having to teach different groups of people and things like that in your current career field. How is that? Being away, going to new places, traveling. You mentioned being in certain cold parts of the U.S.
Yeah,
like
and that's
Nebraska.
and that's the fun part about it is the actual training and the adult learning is interesting, man, because adults, man, it's like, what they want. They want you to say what you mean what you say. They want good quality training. They want to know when it's going to start, when it's going to stop. Don't waste my time. Yeah. And they're going to let you know what they bring, prior knowledge, if they have any type of, because you don't know what they did prior to, they may have sold shoes prior to going into manufacturing. So you want to know all these things about them. Adult learning is fun. And teaching adults is fun too, because they're easier to motivate and they want to know what the importance is of what they're doing, and I can easily show that to them.
Do you see, so to what you said, I feel like, do you also see the opposite where it's like, man, I've been doing this for like 20 years. I know what I'm doing. Like, I don't need training. And like, you get those stubborn people that just don't want to listen. And it's just like,
you can always teach something, because with the fixed mindset, you can always teach them something that they don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
You got to get that.
Buy-in, I guess. If they have a fixed mindset, they probably stopped learning a long time ago. You can walk through a place. Yeah. You can walk through and look at a billboard and they're talking about accidents being down 30%. You'd be like, hey man, did you know accidents are down 30%? They'd be like, no, I didn't know that. He walked past this billboard every day and don't read it.
Autopilot,
You see what I'm saying? And to me, that's what a fixed mindset. They just have those blinders on, man, and they just I'm just here to do my job. I'm just here to do my job. But guess what, man? Everybody has a price. And I'm not saying it has to be monetary. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, man, you just have to motivate them. Some people just want to be motivated and just be told that they're doing a great job, right?
Things.
You know,
Yeah.
some people they like gift cards, right? Right. So they like gift. They like company swag.
Yeah.
Hey, give it to them, right? If this gonna get them, motivated, yeah. But what I do when I go to bakeries and I go to locations is I look for those people who want to train other people. Right? I look for those positive mental attitude people. If I see an operator and I'm walking through and they know I'm a visitor because probably what I have on, they just never seen me before. And a lot of times they want to stop you and find out who you are. Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to know who you are too. Mm-hmm. And now tell me about your job. And who's not going to be happy to want to tell you about what they do, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's what's dope about my job. I get to meet different people from different parts of the country. Not only that, I could go to one location and probably about 7 or 8 different languages are being spoken.
Wow.
Yeah, the demographic is crazy, and the diversity is awesome. And no matter what's going on, you can look at their board, and that board is green, meaning that everything is going well, right? That's so true, yeah, man, yeah. That's amazing. You'll be surprised who's out here, making the country go round, man, and these manufacturing jobs, man. They not only pay well, but a lot of these guys develop good relationships. Like when I was in the military, just working around folks and being around different people. I've never thought that, I would be friends with, different demographics of folks, right? Man, it's crazy. Yeah, so I went from thinking within the radius of where I live to now thinking way beyond that and having my son and having discussions with him and telling him about my experiences and talking to him about things that my parents didn't talk to me about. Mm-hmm. And I know you probably heard this on your podcast, man. I went and got my own apartment, I think when I was about 24, 25, and I went to go get the lights cut on, and I couldn't get them cut on because my mother got the lights cut on in my name when I was too young to do it, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah. So this was the first thing that I had to encounter when it was really time for me to actually start building my finances and building my credit and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that really happens to people. I've heard all these weird stories about it happening. But, I was only about 25, and I think in order for, I got that wiped off. And that worked out well, but it was just some of the lessons that I was starting to learn. And like I said, just growing up in a small radius and going to 37 different countries, meeting folks and just eating food and just fellowshipping. And man, it's been awesome, right?
That's cool.
It's been pretty dope, man. So, and I'm only 50.
Oh, that was one of my questions.
I'm still a young man.
How old are you? Because I got to give you credit. I'm just rewinding a little bit, but having the self-awareness to most people after having a career of 20, you said 24 years in the military, for a lot of people, that's a career. Like, I'm done.
Done.
I finished. I'm retired. I'm chilling. Like, I did what I had to do. But to come out and then educate yourself, get your bachelor's, then go pursue your master's degree or MBA, and then continue to have this like learner's mindset. I think I heard somebody else call it the beginner's mindset, right? It's the opposite of the people on autopilot with the blinkers, right? We're so used to living our life every day, just driving here. Sometimes you're like, I don't even know how do I drive here, right? I got in my car, I don't remember. We're so used to doing it, we don't pay attention anymore. But I think a lot of us live life that way. Yeah. Just go to work, come home. We don't actually pay attention to what we're doing or try to even go beyond that. But I give you a lot of credit because that's amazing. Man,
but I have always the reason why I'm like that, man, I'm always thinking. I try to think ahead. I got my buddies do it too, and I pretty much learned it from a lot of my friends. But man, like I said, I grew up in the projects, man, And when you leave, you don't want to go back to that. That's something that, I mean, it's like that stayed on my mind. Like, and you know, you ever hear people say, I didn't realize I was poor until later on in life? I didn't know. I had no, man, I had a blast, man. My childhood was great. I had 4 other brothers, you know, and we had fun growing up together.
Yeah.
We had our cousins, your first best friends, right?
Exactly.
And I had the people that I lived around, you know, young men grew up with me, right? So I was never alone. My childhood was normal. And like I said, I didn't know I was poor until I actually saw real money, right? But as I'm going through my career in the military, I knew that my mother was getting older. I knew that my father was getting older. And my dad died actually a couple years after I joined. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to have a place to come back to, right? I knew I didn't want to go back there. So I knew at some point it was going to be like, you know what, Omar, you're not going back there. So start thinking on how you want to do this, because the military has an end date as well. So that's when the work started. And,
That's
you know,
amazing.
I'm like, things start working. I'm like, okay. So just knowing that I didn't have a real place to go back to, as far as like somewhere, like I don't have a room. Like some people like, yeah, I just sleep in my old room. Man, my old room is on the 14th floor. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not going back up there, right? So, but at some point my mother moved. She moved out of the projects. And then, you know, when I go home, I would stay with my mother, and I would stay with my aunt after my mother passed away. So, but I was like, it just still didn't feel right, right? So that's why I was like, let me just go somewhere and just start my own thing. I want to just be able to just start my own foundation from somewhere, right? So, and that's where it pretty much started from, man. And I knew I didn't want to go back to Chicago, but believe it or not, I go back a lot. My family sees me
It's
a
always
lot.
home.
Yeah,
You gotta go back. Yeah.
yeah. I'm a fan because I travel. We have 2 bakeries up there.
Okay.
So whenever I go up there for work, first thing I do, I catch an early flight, get off the plane, I go see my aunt.
Then go to Italian Fiesta.
No, I usually don't hit that. I usually hit that with my family, but or I'll get off the plane and I'll go see a relative, spend some time with a relative. None of my brothers live in Chicago anymore. They all scattered out.
Okay.
And but when I go home, I see somebody. I stop in.
What I always tell people is like you have to leave the place that you grew up in, because for me, I left Vegas. I lived in Vegas for from 2005 to about 2019. That's when I left. So me leaving, it's like you see that 14 years of my life nearly lived in Vegas. I never appreciated it. People come, tourists see it, and it's like the Strip to me, it smells gross. Too many people, it smells like sewage. But there's a love for Vegas, and that's why people love to go. So now when I go visit, my eyes is looking at Vegas differently. And I'm sure it's probably the same for you when you go to Chicago. You find more love within the city than if you just live there, because you have those blinders on where it's just like, this is all I know. Why am I going to go to downtown? It doesn't make sense, right? So for me, when I go to Vegas now, I have more of an appreciation for the city and see why people come, because it's the only city where if you're young, if you're old, you can still have a good time.
That's true.
It doesn't discriminate against you. No
That's
matter
true.
what your vice is, Vegas will give it to you.
That's right.
Right? It's up to you to make a decision. Do you want to indulge in those vices? But hey, you could 24/7 do whatever it is that you want. As a kid, it's like, I just want to go to the skate park, do my thing, come home, hung out with my friends, and that's it. But one of the things that, my projects was like these apartments. It was called Foothills Village. It changes now, but I was like, back in the day, it was Foothills. It doesn't matter if you change the name of the apartment. It's still the same apartment.
Right.
But that community aspects where it's like everyone within that area never understood the little that they have, but they have so much. And it's always said, it's like people who are less fortunate tends to be the happiest people. And then when you extract yourself away from that and you see like, oh my God, like there was a family who was the first time that I saw like there's more to life than just what I've been living. And this dude, his daughter was 21. She had American Express. Her limit every single month was $21,000. She was allowed to spend. The dad hired me while I was at Mercedes to be her personal bodyguard. So I'm driving this girl around. Her first vehicle was a G550 G-Wagon. I'm driving that thing around. I'm like, dude, this is my car, yo. I'm trying to make it seem like it was mine, you know. So I'm driving her around. But when you see people come from that walks of life and you see the walks of life you come from, it's like, yo, there's a difference out here. And so it just kind of opened my mindset to that. And he was a mortgage lender. And then, I mean, I think that's probably why my love of real estate kind of come into play. But it just kind of solidified, like you said, you know, when you left the projects, you saw other things and other people, other ways of living. It's like, how can I come back to this? My mind and my eyes have been opened. You know, now for me to come back to this, now you have to make a choice, right? So I think from hearing that, it's like when you look at NFL players and basketball players, like you could take them out the hood, but you can't take the hood out of them.
You can't. But you know what? I think survival for me was keeping that little small piece of Omar somewhere in there to get me through a lot of the tough times that I had to get through while I was in the military, right? Because I knew I couldn't be a robot. I couldn't be yes, sir, no, sir. You know, I wasn't going to do that, right? But that little survival guy kept me in the game, right? So to speak. So, yeah, I appreciate where I'm from, man.
That's cool.
All day.
We have a tradition that we ask every single guest on the podcast, what is their why? If it, you know, your life, your relationship, whatever it may be, but at this point of your life at 50 years old, what do you think your why is?
Wow.
We gotta hit you with the deep one at the end. You know,
You know what? And that's a really good question, man. My why. It doesn't. Man, let me tell you something. I have a fiance, bro, and she is she.
You get that look. I just got married.
She's amazing, man. You know, she has a 7-year-old daughter, and I've been in London's life since she was around 8-9 months.
Wow.
So I am probably the father figure in her life. But my why, I would probably say, and I also have 5 grandchildren, gentlemen. I have 2 daughters.
Oh, amazing.
One 27, one 26, and my son is 24. My 2 daughters have 5 children between them.
Amazing.
And my son, he doesn't have any children. Yeah. But I don't know, man. The why is I would probably say the 2 women in my house, because she's my cheerleader, bro. Like, I don't think, like, when I finish a paper, I just really felt like I rushed it, or I didn't do enough research. It doesn't look good enough. And she reads it and she tells me, hey, you did a great job. She said, submit it and watch you get an A. And every time she's batting 1,000 right now, right? So she's my biggest cheerleader, motivator, man. And she holds it down when I'm away, right? And that's really one of the important aspects of it, right? And that's one of the women that I can trust with my life, right? So, and that's it. That's the why.
That's cool, amazing, man.
Yeah.
I love it. That's amazing.
Well, Mr. Brown, so before we leave, there was a funny thing. I think I kind of told you briefly when I was walking around yesterday. A young kid, 22 years old. Just to kind of make it short, it's so crazy how people think being a player, doing your thing out in the streets, there's fun behind it. And it's like, dude, when you find someone that is almost like that embodiment of what perfection is. I mean, we're not all perfect. We all have flaws, but that can, you know, just help you see the good within yourself and want you to do better. And that importance of having a second head within that household, that community, that essence. Because even for me, it's like, man, I go home sometimes just like, dude, I don't want to do this thing anymore. And you have this other person back there who's your cheerleader who's like, you did great today. And that just resonates so much. It's like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. I'm actually glad I stepped up to the plate today and I did what I could do. Because, man, and if you don't have that and you just going with whomever, going around, you never find that connection.
That's true. And, you know, you talked about that young man. My son is 24. My son will probably never do something like that or just be on the street asking people questions. I don't see any reason behind that. I mean, to me, it's just you're trying to be funny. I really don't know, man, about today's folks. But, man, let me tell you, young folks, man, I think they're much smarter than we are, man.
Oh, yeah.
Much more clever, much more creative. And I think that we just need to try to just continue to nurture them. You know what I'm saying? They're so smart, man. They're making so much money than what we were. You know what I'm saying?
Nowadays,
you got
field, man.
I'm seeing 12, 13-year-old millionaires, man, just from content, creating content, right?
Yeah.
I think that is amazing. However, it does send the wrong message to other children thinking that they can get rich like that too. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not foolish. Everybody can't be rich.
Correct.
And everybody can't get rich, but you got to believe that if you have too many rich people out here, that they probably got it off the backs of poor people in some way, form, or fashion. So you're not going to be rich. Sometimes middle class is okay. We have to work for our status more than anybody else because we are the numbers that get the politicians elected, right? So it's okay to be middle class. It's okay to have a salary that's going to help you maintain. You don't have to commit fraud. You don't have to go out and embarrass yourself just to get money. Because somebody comes up to me as a 50-year-old man and asks me a silly question, I'm not stopping. I'm going to continue. I'm going to keep walking. Mm-hmm. Because I don't have time for that's not, because at the end I don't know what their ulterior motive is because I'm not really hip to a lot of stuff that's going on, right? So, yeah.
But
that's it.
That's how we're going to end it.
I appreciate
it.
This was a good conversation,
this was
man.
really good.
Oh, thank you, man. I really
you, sir.
appreciate that, man.
Thank you so much for stopping in.
Thanks for watching today's episode of It's Go Time. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and leave comments on all of our channels. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube, and don't forget our Instagram and Facebook pages as well.